Hey guys, I am here with Mike from Rock Out Loud, who drove up here. He's from a different part of Jersey that's a ways away. And if you know anything about Jersey, 10 minutes away could be an hour in traffic.
It was an hour and a half, a little bit more though with traffic. Yeah.
So I know Mike because he has schools in the area. Well, we'll talk about that, Rock Out Loud, but he has software that I'm just starting to use now that allows me to finally teach lessons remotely the way I want to. It allows us to do synchronous lessons. It's amazing. But when we spoke, he told me about a line of guitars that he was developing with a very special guitar builder, and I'm going to let him tell you about it.
With 3 schools, and probably about 40% of our 500 students are guitar players. Lots of them are beginner ones. They would come in and they would have these terrible guitars that they spent $400 or $500 on with no case, and they come in when it's raining and there's water all over it, and they play terrible. And my one thing was I could never find a reasonably priced guitar where you can play it and keep it forever. And when I say forever, 20, 30 years, you can keep a guitar if you take care of it. That plays well, and something that plays well enough that won't kind of like obstruct your practicing or playing. And some people get really frustrated and they quit because they can't play well enough. So I always wanted to build a guitar. This is like my 7th or 8th year trying to do this, and I finally got my prototypes done. And coincidentally, a friend of mine, actually a cousin of mine, said to me, you have to reach out to Paul Unkert. And I'm like, Paul Unkert, what's he doing around here in Jersey? He's like in Tom's River, and I bet you he'd be happy to work with you. So Paul Unkert, for those of you who don't know who Paul Unkert is, Paul Unkert, he's the guy who built all of the 17 custom Frankenstrat guitars by Eddie Van Halen. So I think the one that went for $3 million was on Sotheby's. It was sold to a football player a couple months ago, and that was like $3 million. Wow. And this guy, he sets these guitars up. So I called him up, and he picks up the phone. And most times people don't pick up the phone. It's voicemails, texts, until they finally say, you know what, I got to speak to this guy. Let me finally call him back to get him off my back. So he picks up the phone right away, and he's like, yeah, how can I help you? I'm like, I'm putting together these guitars, and I don't know if you're busy right now, but if you have time, I'd love to speak to you about maybe collaborating, where I buy these guitars, put these parts together, and I set it up. But I really need somebody who can really make it to that next level. And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, I'll have these guitars and bring them over to you and possibly have you sign and set them up and number them. This way, if Eddie Van Halen felt that you're the right guitar builder, maybe these kids would be able to play a guitar built from the guy who built Eddie's guitars. So if it's good enough for Eddie Van Halen, it's got to be good enough for my students. So he agreed, and this was like, I think in January. No, it was probably October of last year. He agreed, and I thought he was going to forget about me because he speaks to people from all over the world every day. So how is he going to remember this guy, Mike, who's starting this guitar company? And he said to me, yeah, sure, give me a call back. I called him, I refreshed his memory, and drove out with the prototype. This was the 7th prototype. And I also had the 6th one at the time. And he's like, I don't like the 6th one, but this 7th one, man, the quality and just the craftsmanship is amazing. And I think we can get this to be one of those ultimate guitar playing, as well as almost like a collector's item guitar. And we did a lot of things different on this guitar, which if you like, we could speak about it.
And we should talk too about how affordable it is. That's the amazing thing. Because usually I do a lot of expensive guitars on this channel, as you guys know.
Yeah, he's got a lot of expensive guitars.
But this is something that's accessible for everyone.
So it's $697 and dollars. That includes...
We're from Jersey, it's okay, bucks.
Dollars.
Putting sugar in the cream and you drink it, what's that called? Coffee.
It's including free shipping in the continental United States. It also comes with a beautiful gig bag, and the gig bag's a plush gig bag with a neck support. So if you do want to travel with this on a plane, or if you want to just take it anywhere, or even ship it anywhere as a gift, it's going to have neck support, a plush enough lining where you can just pack it into a gig bag and send it off. And the features on here are a lot more, I guess, reminiscent of more of an American-made. People have called it very similar to the Silver Skies by PRS.
Right. Let's talk about that with the pickups, the electronics, what you've done.
Sure. So the first thing is having something that's set up with really nice action is paramount, because you don't want to discourage, people from playing.
Yeah.
So a C chord on a guitar that's got action that high, it's going to be so difficult.
You're going to quit.
Yeah, you're going to quit.
Yeah.
I think 90% of the people quit, and that's probably because they start on nylon string guitars, or guitars that are not properly set up or stay in tune. And then you say to yourself, if you go to Guitar Center, those guitars are terribly set up. There's no humidifier taking care of them.
Right.
And you ask somebody to set it up, and they don't want to do that. The strings are rusty, and the action's really bad. Not to mention the necks are bowed.
Right.
So coming from us, when you get these things in the mail, and again, they're free shipping, and they go pretty much 3 days to 5 days anywhere in the United States, the neck is perfectly set where it's not going to be bowed like you would see in Guitar Center, or the strings are not going to be rusted. So it's going to sound and play exactly the way it did when Paul set it up. And that's Paul Unkert. It's Paul Unkert. So some of the things I really wanted to do differently that a lot of companies don't do at this price range was, first is put a graphite nut. Graphite nuts are incredibly important because the lubrication of the strings. So when you use a bar, most Fenders will go out of tune. They use bone, sometimes cheap plastic, but when you play on the bar, there's no lubrication here. Everywhere the string touches is God. That's what Paul Reed Smith says. Right. So I wanted to make sure that we had that. And now, Paul Unkert had said, you got to get those Floyd Rose locking tuners. I'm like, dude, but this is like not that style of guitar. So I did say I wanted to get locking tuners. So I did get mother of pearl locking tuners, and I probably should tell you to visit the GrandeGuitars.com to really get close-ups. But these are mother of pearl locking tuners, and it's very important to understand why locking tuners are so important, and Paul explained it really well when I was with him. He said to me, when you wrap a string around that post and you use your bar, or even if you bend the note, that string, because it's basically wrapped a few times, doesn't really land at the same spot. You want to pivot in one place. So by putting it through a locking tuner, you only have one pivot. You don't have tons of winding there, so it goes back into space. So that's a really important feature of having a locking tuner. I wanted 3 and 3 because I think everybody's recognizing these Fender Strats and these copies right now. And to be honest with you, I didn't want it to look like a Fender in terms of the headstock. I wanted it to be a little different. So I came up with my own version of this.
There's some to the stability of that too, actually. So I work with the guys at Mobile Guitars. They come here a couple times a year and do all my setups. And they're huge. They're on tour with like Collective Soul. These guys are the techs. The ultimate techs.
Wow, I didn't know that.
When he was working on my guitars, and I've had him on the channel, he was talking about how it's actually, he called it an inferior design to have them in a line because of the way it balances. It'll start to twist the neck. If you have 3 and 3, the neck stays stable.
Exactly. My son just got a Firebird by Gibson.
Yeah.
And the nut broke off because it's not lined up properly, and there's so much tension, the nut broke. So I had to crazy glue it again. But so that's the first thing, is the locking tuners, mother of pearl locking tuners, and then the graphite nut.
These are gorgeous. I love the white and the black together like that.
Yeah,
it's nice.
It's classy, right?
Yeah.
And then there's also the scarfing on the neck. So you'll notice that the neck kind of also bends back or tilts back a little bit, which is done really, really nicely. There's elegant design here when it comes to the heel of that. Over here, not as opposed to this heel. But that's as far as the headstock goes. We wanted to make it where it's an exposed truss rod. How often, I know I adjust my neck probably every season. Maybe sometimes every week. It depends on, like right here it's cold, but you go out, when I get home, I'm going to have to readjust this. Then those screws, and you either lose the screws, or they get stripped. Or, so I just figured I'd just make it nice and clean and expose it and keep it simple, which is what I did. And the logo, which is Grande Guitars there. And then you have something that Fender, and I don't know why they never did this, but they do it on a couple of versions of custom shops. But Leo Fender always felt that this pickup here deserves a tone. And I say to everybody, why in the world would you want to put a tone on a roll-off bass on something that's got too much bass? So what I did was we took these two and we wired them to these two pickups. So you can get almost like that Eric Johnson-y type of tone where you roll off a little bit of the high end, which you could do here, which you can't do on Fenders.
Now, what are the pickups on these?
So these are custom pickups, but they're noiseless custom pickups because a lot of people, our students, they play with their phones. So if you play with your phones, you put this on the 4 position, you get
Yeah.
Not these guitars, because this is more for the newer guitar player who really wants to play, and everybody walks around with their phone in their pocket.
And now, you brought two of them here. There's one that has a different set of pickups. You want to talk about that now, or?
Yeah, actually, let me just finish a couple of things. The next thing was the floating bridge. So I wanted it so when you use the bridge, most Fenders or anybody that's got bridges, especially on guitars that are under $1,000, they usually keep this flat up against the body. And by the way, the wood here is basswood. This is Canadian maple, and this is basswood wood. But we wanted it so it floats. And the reason why is because I'm a big Satriani guy, as is this guy, Mark here. And we were speaking about that. I like pulling up on the bar. Paul was like, no, Eddie always wanted to go down. He rarely pulled up, which is true, but I wanted it to float. And I have it floating so you can pull up. So as you play on the notes, you can get that really nice...
Yeah, we'll plug that in later.
Oh, okay, so you can pull up on it and bring down. So I wanted to do that and have that flexibility. I also made it so you can pop out this tremolo bar as opposed to screwing it in. How many times have you been like this? And it's like, and then finally it comes off and then falls on the floor.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure that that was not an issue. And the last thing is which is very, very important to me, is this back plate. So this back plate is called Grande Guitars, but then it's got this thing called single point. So my son Salvatore is going to be 24 in August. Time flies. He was born with no other choice but to play guitar. He sucked at sports, but he was I made him an amazing musician because he had no he had no choice. So he used to say before school, single point. And I guess because we would drive and there was a school bus and there was a sign which looked like almost like a warning sign. He goes, Dad, single point. I'm like, what does that mean? He means best friend, Dad. Every time we see that, I just say best friend. Yeah. So the name of this guitar is the Grande Guitars Single Point, and the Single Point edition means it's your best friend. So it's sort of like a tribute to my son Salvatore.
Love it. All right, so we have the other model of the guitar here. We wanted to show you that as well. You'll notice it's all the same except for this one little piece here, and tell us about that.
Sure. So I don't know about you. We both grew up at the same time. So Damasio was a really big name in pickups. In fact, Satriani and Vi, they have their own. Right? They came in the Gem guitars, the Satriani Ibanez. And so I reached out to them and I said to them, I'm building this new guitar with Paul Unkert, and I was hoping that maybe we can get an endorsement and have them be part of this whole Grande package. And they said, yeah, we could do that. And they went through the specs and they loved the story, they loved the guitar, and they said, yes, we can do this. So I went out, and you can order whatever you want from Damasio to find out what's the best match. But psychologically, I've always grown up with the Tone Zone. Right. That was my thing. It was a humbucker, but they make the Tone Zone single.
Right.
So I put this in and it was like love at first sight, man. I knew that this was the right pickup. It's got that great sustain, and you could roll off a lot of that, crunch to get a really great sound. The thing is that Damasio says anything that has a Damasio pickup in it starts at $1,200. So that's a big difference. That's almost twice the cost of the guitar. To be honest with you, the sound, if you're looking for that sound, instead of getting a Les Paul and a Strat, this would be the combination of both if you wanted to do something like that. So that's something, it's special order. They don't come right out of the, that you'd have to email us, and then we'd have Paul put that in and install it. Right. Cool. But it sounds great.
All right.
Yep.
Let's do a little bit of music with it.
Yeah, sounds good.